Hello everybody, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis and welcome to today's video. Today is going to be episode 5 of A Town Called Mallus, my Warhammer Age of Sigmar hobby project and my Stormcast Eternals army. And today we're going to be discussing a unit that, if you've been paying attention to my not so subtle foreshadowing, you may guess what this unit is even before you see it. Because I've been talking about things I wanted to add to the army, and this has come up and been dropped and come up again. So anyway, that's what we're adding to the army today, but you'll see that in a minute or two when this intro is over. We've got the paint scheme for this unit to discuss, because there's actually something to discuss with this paint scheme, and some tactical things as well, because of course I love talking about tactics. And I also have a very, very short little after-action report for a game that I played last week. It's not going to be like a full-on post-game review, because, well, I'll explain more in the video, but basically it was a multiplayer narrative mission, and it was a bit of a smash fest. So my army didn't really get to do what my army does, and I learned a few things, absolutely, and I will discuss what I learned, but it isn't really going to be good to make a full battle report on it, because some people were either unwilling or unable to be filmed for one reason or another, and we never really got a consensus about it, so we didn't make a battle report. But I hope you enjoyed that discussion nonetheless, and of course I hope you enjoyed the new unit. If you also wish to, the French version of this will be out tomorrow, and while I know it doesn't get the same traction that the English version gets, and the English version doesn't get the traction that, say, my lore videos get, I completely understand that. I'm dealing to a different crowd. I'm dealing to the hobby crowd and the AOS crowd, as opposed to the 40k lore crowd, which is why most of you are here. I really do enjoy making this series, and I'm enjoying the bilingual format, because it's a way for me to do my language stuff without doing uni stuff, so I'm enjoying that. So anyway, I won't ramble on any longer, I won't keep you in the dark about what we're doing today. So let's get to the models, discuss the paint scheme, discuss the tactics, we'll have a very brief discussion about the game that we had and the lessons we've learned from it, and then we'll be into the last episode before Christmas. Yeah, my, where has this semester gone? Anywho, so let's get into the models. I hope you enjoy the video. This is episode 5 for A Town Called Mallus. Here we go.
Yep. Well, yeah. Chunky, heavy cavalry. What can I say? Chunky, heavy cavalry. You knew this was going to happen eventually. I've been talking about it since episode flipping 2. Anyway, here we have 2 concussors, aka retributors riding Dracoths. If you have ever seen chunkier heavy cavalry, then actually don't answer that. There probably are chunkier heavy cavalry units out there, probably in ogres. But still, for Stormcast, this is as chunky as your heavy cavalry gets. And I have to admit, I wasn't 100% sold on the Dracoth cavalry models at first. I don't know why. Something about the models didn't take my imagination the same way that maybe the Griff Charger did, or that even General Stormcast Infantry did. I was never that sold on the actual Dracoths. And yet when you actually work on them, and you paint them and you build them, they are fantastic kits. A little bit counterintuitive to assemble, I'll get onto that. But to paint, absolute pleasure. Genuinely really good kit, and I highly recommend it. So let's start with the paint scheme, the obvious being, of course, the Dracoths themselves. I realise my camera is a little bit darker than I'm seeing, so I think you can see all the details, but if something doesn't come out quite clear, I apologise for that. So the armour is the same as it has always been. I'm going to use this guy as my example. The armour is the same as it has always been, so black armour in Abaddon Black, Dry Brush Mechanica Standard Grey, wash with non-oil, and you're done. The gold is the same as it has always been. Retributor Armour, Carroburg Crimson, highlight with either Sigmarite or Auric Armour Gold, though in this case it was pretty much entirely Auric Armour Gold, and done. The red is the same as it's always been, which is Mephiston Red, non-oil wash, and Corn Red base coat, non-oil wash, Mephiston Red highlight. The only difference being on the cloaks, and I really hope this comes out, this area is done like that. This area is done with a Carroburg Crimson wash as opposed to Mephiston Red, just to give the scale effect a little bit more pop, I suppose. It's nothing major, but it is something. The white is done the same way it's always been done, so Mechanicus Standard Grey, wash with non-oil, highlight with Administratum Grey, same effect as with the teeth, and the horns were also highlighted with Administratum Grey, as were, no, the talons I didn't do, the claws, sorry. And the purple is just purple, nothing special there. The base, I discussed the basing scheme last time, which is, of course, Martian Iron Crust. Yeah, Martian Iron Crust. Sorry, there's a paint called Martian Iron Crust and a paint called Martian Iron Earth. They're almost identical. I have to remember which one was which. So Martian Iron Crust, Caribou Crimson Wash, that's the basing scheme, and we're sticking to it. The fun comes in the Dracos themselves, or Dracos, or however you prefer to pronounce it. Now, on the surface, they're quite similar to the Griff Charger, and the reason for that is they start with the same base coat, which, if I just find it, is... Where is it? Yeah, here we go. Which is the remarkably blue... You go there, shall we? Stegodon Scale Green, which looks very, 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 very blue. It just does, okay? It looks very, very blue. But that was the base. And on the Griff Chargers, you then dry brush this with Skink Blue and wash it with Coelia Green shade. That forms the turquoise that you see on the Griff Charger, the Lord Aquilor. Go back to the first part if you want to see that in a bit more detail. But after the Stegodon Scale Green, rather than do things the same way, I changed it up. And I did a wash, which I'm going to put in here, of non-oil. So I washed it all the way down, got it nice and dark, so it was a deep, deep turquoisey blue. I don't know why this paint's called green. It's blue. At least in my eyes, it's blue. Maybe my eyes are funky, but it looks blue to me. And then I washed it down, obviously, with the non-oil. And then to finish, I did go back to the Griff Charger scheme, and I used a dry brush of Skink Blue. However, I used it very, very sparingly. You'll notice that it's basically anything that's scaly. So I'm just going to move this one side. You'll see anything that's sort of scaly-ish is where you have the highlights, including on the spines, although that's mainly because there's scales there. Along the sides of the face, and then again you see here all along the legs. Anything that's sort of cracked and scaly has got the Skink Blue dry brush, and that's the effect I went for. So that's the Dracos basic paint scheme. Nothing too crazy. The silver's done the usual way, the tongue is done in red, and the gums are done in purple. Really, it's a very simple paint scheme, and that's something that I really like about this army, is, as I've said it before, it is a very, very simple paint scheme. It's almost so simple, it's funny how simple it is. But this is what I like, and I think it really does work to have quite a simple paint scheme. I'll show off the other cavalryman for you here. So if I just turn him around, he's got his hammer much, much lower. There's no sergeant or concussor prime for these guys. They're all of equal rank. They're all just paladins, which is fine. So you can see all the details there. And the lining of the cloak I've done in white to go along with the Lord Aquilor, Aquilor. I don't even know how it's supposed to be pronounced. But I've done that in white to go with him. General fabric spot color of red as usual. And a lot of the sort of leather details, because I don't own a brown paint, or I don't have a brown paint out here, is in grey because that just makes sense. In terms of actually getting these guys built and assembled, it's not as intuitive as build the mount, build the rider, because like more than a few kits, actually it was a much more a case of build the mount, build the rider, but it wasn't perfect because the reins for the Dracoth are attached to the face paints. You can sort of just see there's a little join mark there that I haven't quite got perfect. But the reins are attached to the face, so attaching the face means you attach the reins. And you want to attach the face because, well, you need to paint the whole face in one go. You shouldn't actually do that because it will actually allow you to get into all the interior details of the mouth much more easily. But because you've got the two reins attached to the face or to the horn plates as it is on the other side, it's sort of a little piece. Sorry, I'm off camera here. It's a little piece here. You can't really just glue those on because then the reins are sort of left just kind of high and dry. I just realised I didn't paint the inside of that shield. I painted the inside of the other shield, didn't I? No, because I'm a moron. Oops, that's a really awkward angle. But yeah, so you kind of have to then attach the shield hand to the reins, which means that the lower left arm sort of is glued onto the model, and none of the rest of the body is. If you want to sort of get it, if you're painting as you go. So I did it in a bunch of sub-assemblies. So I had the shield as one sub-assembly. The entire body, including the weapon, was one sub-assembly. Then the left arm was sort of there. I think it might have been already attached to a couple of bits. And then the steed was pretty much built all in one go with the reins kept separate. So I think maybe I kind of attached it in a weird order, but I kept the reins pieces off to allow me to paint the area in between. I kept the shield off, obviously, and then that was pretty much the only sub-assemblies I needed. It was about 4 pieces at a time. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sorry. And it worked. This was my first one, so if it looks a little bit cleaner on this guy, that's why. But that's my concussors. Oh, and I realised I rambled on far too long there. As far as tabletop goes, they hit pretty hard. They've got a shooting attack that hits on 4s and then basically just does mortal wounds. It's an arcane bolt that hits on 4s and has a 12-inch range. It's pretty good. D3 mortal wounds just every turn, which is nice. They're really fast with they're pretty fast with a 10-inch move, 5 wounds a model, a 3+ armor save with rerolls of 1 because of their shields, and also bravery 7, so they're basically never going to break unless there's modifiers and other shenanigans at work. Let's just get a bit more centered. There we go. As far as their melee weapons go, their hammers, they have 3 attacks each, 3s and 3s with 1 rendered 2 damage, which is pretty damn good. And if you roll a 6 to hit, then you get mortal wounds on top of that. And if you do get those mortal wounds, then your opponent cannot pile in, which limits the amount of attacks they can have back against you, which is nice if you're heavy cavalry, who are almost always outnumbered. The Draco's Claws and Fangs, they got 3 attacks that are also 3s and 3s with 1 rend. They're only 1 damage, but if they wound on a 6, then they do d6 damage rather than 1, which is pretty nice. So these guys hit really hard, are really, really hard to kill, because the 3-up armor save re-rolling 1s, without any modifiers in play, of course, is pretty damn good, and even against semi-decent rend, like rend 2, a 5's re-rolling 1s on cavalry it's not great, but it's not terrible considering it's a rend 2 weapon. Admittedly, they cost 280 points for the pair, but at the same time, with the amount of damage they can put out in melee, I mean, in the perfect world, you get 3 mortal wounds per guy with the hammers that then do 2 damage each on top of that. So that's 3 damage per guy. 3 damage per attack. So that's 9 damage. The Draco's Claws and Fangs, in theory, can do up to 18. Average 3d6, you get 10. So you can put out up to 20 wounds a guy if you roll like a god. And even if you roll generically, even not accounting for the 6s, each guy is still putting out 3, 2 damage, another damage. They're still putting out at least 3 damage without any 6s in play. And 3 damage a turn against heroes is pretty damn good. Against monsters, that's decent, particularly when there's 2 or 3 cavalrymen. And if you do get any 6s, then it just starts getting a little bit out of control, and they just don't die. I can attest from my Cold One Knights who had really good saves for themselves back in my old Dark Elf army, that cavalry with good saves, even when they have 2 wounds a guy, are incredibly hard to shift. These guys have 5 wounds a guy, so they're just going to keep chugging and chugging and chugging. I'm not planning to get any more Draco's Cavalry, at least not in the short run, for the simple reason of, well, they are really, really expensive points-wise. If I got another unit of Concussors, that's 550 points. I got another unit of, let's say, Desolators, who are the mounted Decimators, who get more attacks the more guys you have, so generally suck. You've got the Fulminators, who are even more defensive, because they get a 2+ save against shooting, and do 3 damage on the charge instead of 1 because they've got basically lances. And they also get what 40k fans would know as, well, it's not quite Hammer of Wrath, but it's a really short-ranged, high damage shooting attack. And then you have the Tempestors, who are crossbow cavalry. I don't think these guys really serve a purpose other than disruptive fire, which allows you to get -1 to enemy hit rolls until your next hero phase, which is nice, but the heavy cavalry, man. Call me a purist, but heavy cavalry should be crashing into combat and ruining somebody's face. That's what heavy cavalry's for. As for whether I'll get a Lord Selzent on Dracos, this brings up a very good point that I wanted to raise from previous episodes' comments. Because the comments have been telling me, in both English and French, to pick up a Lord Relictor. I agree, the Lord Relictor is good, but the only way to get a Lord Relictor is to buy the Age of Sigmar starter set. And unless I wanted to follow up all the Bloodbound, which I don't really have a place to do that because Kieran's not working on his corn right now, and if I wanted Prosecutors and more Liberators, which I don't, and I had ways to convert the Paladins that are in there because you only get 3 instead of 5, they're not a unit, which I don't. I want to convert them, but I haven't got the tools to do that right now. It means I'm basically paying for the Age of Sigmar starter set to get Vanda's Hammerhand, who I can buy separately, and a Lord Relictor. So if I want a Lord Selzent Dracos, I can just buy Vanda's Hammerhand or convert up a Lord Selzent out of this, but I really wouldn't do that because then you're paying for odd numbers of cavalry and just, ugh. And the Lord Relictor, if he was on his own, I'd buy him. But because he's in the starter box, I'm not going to be doing that. So now you know about the Lord Relictor. I think that's all I need to discuss regarding these guys in particular, because I can't really talk about how they actually perform on the tabletop, because I didn't get a chance to use them in the game. So I'm just going to go and jog my memory a little bit of how the match went down, and then we'll discuss the game, what it meant for me, what I learned, and where we're going from here, because obviously we're heading into the Christmas break and all that stuff. I discussed that at very short length last time, but I'll discuss it more next time. So let's talk about the game that we had, shall we? Right then, shall we discuss this match? So this game was a 1,000 points per player mega narrative battle. I cannot come up with a better way to describe it. It was my Stormcast, a force of High Elves, a force of Caradron Overlords, a force of, well, it was mixed dwarves, it was Fire Slayers and Caradron Overlords, and 2 blocks of Lizardmen versus a Nurgle, a Tzeentch, a Khorne, and a Skaven Scryer? Yeah, Skaven Scryer, because it had Storm Fiends in it. Yay. So they had some pretty big monsters. Well, they had 1 or 2. Primarily that being, they had, what was it? Oh, I can't remember now. They had 1 Nurgle monster type thing. It wasn't a Great Unclean One or anything. But I think it was like a Nurgly type monster. And they also had a Lord of Change. And there was some other pretty nasty stuff knocking around. A bunch of heroes. Oh, and there was some Dark Elves as well, and some Wood Elves. Sorry, Sylvaneth. We had Sylvaneth on our side, and the Chaos guys took the Dark Elves to keep the numbers balanced. Those Dark Elves had like 2 Reaver Vault Throwers, and there was just a mix of stuff going on with it. So the mission was thus. The Order Army, which was our mixed force, had to capture a bastion, which was in effect a Chaos Dreadhold building, then storm another Chaos Dreadhold through 1 of 2 gates, and kill Korgus Kull, who is the Bloodbound hero from the Age of Sigmar starter set. Except this Korgus Kull could not fight, but he had 15 wounds. So he was pretty hard to kill, but he couldn't fight back. So if you could actually get him one-on-one, you could kill him quite without fear of reprisal, you just wouldn't take a lot longer to kill him. We only had 6 turns. So right away, we were going to have problems in winning this game. And of course, we lost, because the way you got the gates open of the Chaos Dreadhold, you had options. You could go over the wall and storm the walls, but if you stormed the walls, you took mortal wounds, because that's what a Chaos Dreadhold does, apparently. Or at least that's how the games manager played it. However, if you open the doors, you need more models within a certain range of the doors. So what the Chaos Army had was basically they stuck a huge block of plague bearers behind one door, and a huge mixed block of, I think, like demons and bloodbound behind the other door. So we were never going to get the doors open because we were perpetually outnumbered. In terms of maneuverability, we had some Sylvaneth Wildwoods and we had realm gates we could call in reinforcements, but we were never going to get those doors open, so we were kind of doomed from the start, especially when we got really unlucky and failed to take the bastion to allow the gates to be opened until turn 3, because you couldn't open the gate until the bastion was open. So it was a bit weird like that. For my part, I brought all the units you can see here. So Vanguard Hunters times 5, Liberators times 5, my 2 Dragoth Cavalry, my Knight Heraldor, my Lord Aquilor, and another unit that I'm not going to reveal here because I want to talk about it next time. So, spoilers. And I feel like I did alright with what I could do. With the hand I was dealt, I did alright because I basically set myself up to, along with pretty much the dwarf guy and a bit of Sylvaneth, take the bastion. So the plan was my shooting combined with their magic and then one heavy assault, because I couldn't use my cavalry, I had to use my infantry. I was going to use my liberators to help clear the walls whilst shooting it down what was up there, and also they were using a butt ton of magic to try and help clear the way. And we did pretty well. My liberators got up on the walls. They did slightly squiff their attacks because we couldn't quite clear out the unit first time on turn 2. If we'd have got them out on turn 2, it might have helped, but it took us until turn 3 to get the doors open because partially I squiffed my attacks. But at the same time, I barely lost any models except to mortal wounds because Stormcast are pretty tough. My liberators took a smattering of shooting and basically nobody died. My Heraldor took no damage at all. My other unit took no damage at all. I kept my Lord Aquilor, my Vanguard Hunters back away from the fight, so obviously they were taking their pot shots, but at the same time I wanted them safe and alive so that when the gates were down, I could do my Lord Aquilor's command ability, do a teleport across to another board edge to try and get into a position where I could try and either assassinate or distract or do something of that order just to put a thorn in the side of what the Chaos Army was planning to do. So that was my basic plan, while my cavalry were just going to launch alongside the Sylvaneth a thunderous charge at one of the gates if we could get it open. Of course, we couldn't get it open, so we lost, but that was sort of how that went. The things I learned from this game. Stormcast are very tough. I think I knew this already, but I've been fighting a lot of stuff with Rend, but Stormcast are very tough. They do not fall over easily, which is good. However, they have basically no protection against mortal wounds. Then again, a lot of armies don't really have protection against mortal wounds. I can live with it. They needed a weakness somewhere, and if it's mortals, fine. So, the other thing I learned is the shooting is not huge on range, and speed is definitely something this army kind of does lack. Because, I mean, the cavalry are move 10, and my Lord Aquilor's move 12, and with the teleport move, my Vanguard Hunters and him are very maneuverable. My Vanguard Hunters are also, like, move 6. So I can get about, but when it was coming to taking those walls, it was 2 turns of running and charging because of my Knight Heraldor's ability to inspire the Liberators. I had to run for 2 turns just to be able to make a charge. I think actually, if I'm more accurate, I was just in a position to make a long bomb charge on turn 1 thanks to running, with the way the deployment was set up. But I needed 2 turns of running and charging to get up on the walls and do anything, which is slightly disappointing. What I also learned is why everybody is so scared of Tzeentch. Oh my god. Tzeentch just ruined me. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Screw Tzeentch. Seriously, my cavalry were all but wiped out by 1 spell that just did like 7 mortal wounds. My Lord Aquilor took another 5 to another spell and was then just shot down by whatever was left, like flickering fire from the horrors or something. My Vanguard Hunters fared no damn better, taking even more mortal wounds and then just being finished off by some bloody rat ogres. So, basically, more than half my army, about 2/3 of it nearly, was just annihilated in a single turn by Tzeentchian magic. I don't think there were fate dice involved. There were too many players and I couldn't keep track of everything that was going on. But, wow. Tzeentch magic is ridiculous on toast. Just, ow, that hurt. That really, really did hurt. But having said that, the GM was kind of like, you really should not have charged that gate. You should have just gone after the other gate, which had Nurgle and Khorne on it, because that way you at least stood a chance. No, we didn't, because they could have just stood behind the gate and we'd have got nowhere unless we had taken an absolute butt ton of mortal wounds. But anyway, yeah, the game was heavily stacked against it. It was a narrative-style mission. We were never going to win in 6 turns. We'd have needed 8 and more recycling, at least, because we just couldn't get the gates open. And any smart playing Chaos player would have just won that game, hands down. But I learned a few things, as I say. Stormcast are really bad against mortal wounds, but otherwise they're basically invincible. My cavalry were basically unkillable to anything that wasn't mortal wounds. And I also learned that the Knight Heraldor is even better than I thought, because he used Thunder Blast to great effect on the Bastion, and also his Inspirability was critical to getting my Liberators into combat. And yeah, I didn't learn that much about the Vanguard Chamber elements because they teleported once to get to the gates to help get it open and then died immediately. Hoi, fine. Anyway, that's basically the game. Not a huge amount to report, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see a few pictures of the armies that were on display, you can go over to my Twitter account. I shared a bunch of photos of the models on display that night. They're not the best photos I've ever taken, but you can have a look at some of the armies that were on display. So, that's all for today's video, and I do hope you have enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of the Dracoth Cavalry, both in terms of whether it was a good choice to add to the army, how I should maybe use them as maybe other than just beatstick heavy cavalry that go face, the paint scheme, everything really, and all of that stuff, so let me know. And if you have any thoughts about next time, do let me know on that one as well, because I do love reading all of your comments. Tune in tomorrow for the French version of this video if you want to listen to it. Thank you all for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and this has been episode 5 of a town called Mallus, my Age of Sigmar hobby project. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.